baggy, so I had one tighten up. I think it was its black T-shirt or whatever.
Somebody, though, has to explain to me. I heard that the reason they're called C-37s on set is that once upon a time that was an order number from one of the catalogs of the big companies that had them. But it doesn't seem to make any sense other than to just annoy people who haven't been on sets. And
Isn't it a C-37 named after a plane?
CK-34. It's actually a clothing pin.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we call it C-37 on the set. I don't know.
I've always got it CK-34.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, that's probably as bad as the East Coast and the West Coast grips having different names for the same tools.
Could be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hey, everyone. Final Cut Pro Radio TV Live. We are going to be talking about, there's nothing to talk about, is there?
No.
Nothing.
We're going to talk.
We're going to talk about retail prices for produce.
We're going to talk with Philip Hodgetts in my upper left-hand corner. Say hi, Philip.
Hi.
And right above me is Bill Davis.
I guess I should look down and say hi.
Yes, and to my left, Cirina Catania. What was that? The Brady Bunch? It had all the squares.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Should we
There
sing
we
the
go.
theme
This is-
song?
And that would have been an amazing amount of optical compositing in the day. And
Absolutely.
now we just drag them into the timeline, square them down, and we're done.
It was probably
Absolutely.
an ADO system, and we used to have to pay for ADO Ampex Digital Optical by channel, so every picture cost you another $200 in the edit.
But most they only had 2 or 3 channels anyway. So for a 9 composite, you have to do 3 passes.
Right, 4-channel ADO was like, whoa! Somebody's
Unbelievable.
paying the
Bill.
big bucks. It's just, there's been a lot of changes, and people who are producing video in this era should be, I know they won't be because they don't understand it, but there's a lot of thankfulness into where we are now versus where a lot of us had to come up.
Yeah, I often say that, when I started, the things that could not be done for love or money when I started out, then, they were just impossible. Then it came down, well, if you had enough money, you could get a 4-channel ADO.
Right.
And now it's like, well, I can just drop that in a timeline. It's not even a challenge.
Right. Yeah,
No.
It had to be an institutional user who would have the infrastructure, a TV station or a high-end production house who would be able to not just buy it for tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, but had to have people to run it who were trained on specifically how that machine ran.
Yeah.
Nowadays, there wouldn't be enough people to run it anyway, even if they could afford it.
Now they just want you to throw in 52 flying screens for no more money.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So we got WWDC's coming up on Monday, which is really early. Typically, I thought it was like the 2nd or 3rd week of June, but this is the very first week, June the 3rd, this year. So typically they have their developers. It's a developers conference, right, Philip?
Yes. Yeah.
Are you going this year?
It's actually a lottery to get in. No, we don't do enough real heavy development. We sort of at a much more comfortable level, let's say. And there's not a lot of sessions at WWDC that would be relevant to the sort of work that we do.
Okay.
I mean, I think there's like 2 sessions on AV Foundation in the entire week.
Wow. That's not much at all.
and maybe 1 on core data, and there's 80% of Builder is in those 2 things. So yeah, you really need to be quite specialist to get the benefit out of WWDC.
Yeah, it seems like the majority of it is iOS based stuff.
That's where the majority of Apple's users are.
Exactly. So WWDC is typically less interesting to me than, say, well, obviously the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit is the main thing of the year, but then secondarily, NAB is more interesting to me typically.
One of the interesting things that is expected, I think it's been pre-announced, is that this year they will expand. I think it's Project Marklar, which is bringing it's a interface layer over your iOS application, so it runs on a Mac OS, so that you can run one basic binary with 2 different interfaces. Now that they've been doing it on a couple of their apps this year. And it's expected at this WWDC that you can move most iOS apps, or at least more iOS apps, to Mac OS transparently without much development work.
So is that kind of the first baby steps into the kind of merging interface idea?
I don't think you can ever merge a touch interface with a non-touch interface. I mean, at that level, they're very different. And there's a lot of other differences between the two OSs that I doubt there is ever going to be any true merging of, like there's only one target, but this project will make it much more easy to develop once and run it on both platforms rather than having to do two different projects with the same core.
Good. If they're knocking friction out of the development time for both sides, that's nothing but good.
Yeah, and it means that a lot of apps that we have a lot of utility apps in the iOS world for production that could come back to the desktop if the developers so desired.
So how far apart are the apps for iOS and Mac OS right now? Is there a worlds of difference between how they're?
It's kind of it's one of those. It depends on the app.
Okay.
Certainly at the interface layer, they're both very different. I mean, in iOS, you can only have one window, for example. You can't really, you can split the screen, but you can't have, you can't really just sort of flip between windows like you can on Mac OS. So although Tim Cook says that you can do everything on iOS that you can do on Mac OS, he is very, very wrong. I have a whole list of things that if ever I get the chance to put it to Tim Cook, I will explain to him just how wrong he is.
I heard a rumor that on the iPad we're going to be
just
able to
spam out
multiple
of mail on iOS. There's no select all. Unless somebody actually programs a select all into a list view.
Oh, yeah. Good
There
point.
is no default select or command. There's no command key. Sorry, I talked over you, Cirina. I'm sorry. What did you say?
No, I was saying I heard a rumor that we're going to have multiple windows available on the iPad, and also that we're getting dark mode.
Dark mode has definitely been in iOS has definitely been a strong rumor for sure.
Yeah. So I think I would be willing to bet, Philip, and you and Greg know more about this than I do, that they're going to make it easier for you to navigate the App Store with everything that you have. I think that's got to happen. There's just too much.
I just felt that the App Store, the new modern App Store on Mac OS, is actually a step back for findability for us.
Is it?
Yeah, has been. So.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of, I don't know about the App Store as much as iTunes. I always have trouble with it. I mean, just getting media on and off of your iPhone, for example, should be a lot easier than it is.
Yeah,
I'm not sure why. Yeah.
Well, it's for keeping the music that you're paying for, either subscription or purchased, locked down. I mean, if you want to do Apple Music on the watch, for example, you have to put a passcode on the watch, even if you don't otherwise want the passcode. But if you want to use any Apple Music on your watch, then you must have a passcode to protect it.
Well, wasn't that the biggest hassle and stopper when they did the iTunes Store was getting people to sign up based on intellectual property management?
Yeah.
And the fact that people weren't going to suddenly go all Napster and steal all the songs every day.
Yeah. Well, which is also why you can't do both a video screen recorder and an audio recording QuickTime player at the same time. You can do one or the other, and that's just avoid people ripping stuff off YouTube and other places, off iTunes and other places where they should rip it. Now, of course, the solution is you play it on your iPad, connect the iPad to your computer, and in QuickTime Player 10, just record from the iPad, and you record both audio and video there.
Young people listening, block all the what Phil just said out.
Well, but remember when Steve Jobs, when he first introduced the iPod, it was RIP.
Yes, rip, mix, burn.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was one of the main features. You can rip them from your CDs, MP3s and stuff.
Can't do it
But
anymore.
in that era, that was an important thing. And, people, the whole idea of the iTunes Store, remember what we had before? Remember those odd little music players? And to me, it was the synergy of the three things. It was a relatively big library, although it was small at start and grew, a device that was simple to use and easy, and then the integration of the two things that really blew up the entire music business and reinvented it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But of course, at that point, it was Apple didn't have any actual music to sell you.
Right.
When iTunes first mix burn was you're already paid for music.
No, exactly. That's true.
So it only really changed. Their attitude changed when they had skin in the game.
Mm-hmm. Well,
isn't that funny how that happens?
Yes, it's very, very peculiar.
So
No,
I
I
like
remember
that
that.
they're giving us the iOS 13 tonight, so we'll be able to look at it and play with it before the conference, right? That'd
Were
be
you
fun.
supposed to say that, Cirina? Or was that a secret?
Oh, that's
Well,
a
no,
rumor.
I just got the announcement on my screen up there.
Okay.
It said iOS
Yeah,
13. So if it's hitting my
updating.
screen from Apple, it's fair.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
updating tonight, and that's what they're going to bring in the dark mode, I believe. But I think they're I
Yeah.
bet you they're going to introduce the Mac OS 15. And Philip, I bet you have updates to your watch, which you're going to love because you use that watch all the time, right?
I do actually.
So I hear.
My,
I'm
sorry,
sorry.
Rich, go ahead.
I hear thunder outside. If I
You're
did,
kidding.
if I get disconnected, I will call everybody back as soon as it gets back on, just in case we get disconnected.
I'm
Okay.
not worried about being disconnected. I'm worried about you being fried by the
No,
lightning.
Yeah.
I think I'm okay as far as that goes. I live
Hey,
in
wait
a
a
house.
second. I want a T-shirt with Cirina's quote, "Bring on the dark mode."
There you go.
That's an excellent T-shirt line.
Yeah, let's make maps on iOS as illegible as they are now on Mac OS in dark mode. One app that really doesn't work for me is the dark mode in maps on Mac OS it's illegible. It just lacks in contrast.
Well, not even that, but you know what gets me is that when you go from dark mode onto a browser screen, you go from dark to light all of a sudden, and it hurts my eyes. Because especially with these new screens, they're pretty bright.
YouTube has a dark mode.
Turn them down.
Yeah, you're right. It does. You can turn it in your main page dark. I've done that for sometimes, but
Because I will say on the other side a little bit. I've been working on a very complex set of projects, and I've got a lot of windows. I mean, I'm having to do Excel connections for dialogue that goes with things. So I've got an iPad off to the side mounted on a thing. I've got my screen up top, my main monitor. I've got my Mac in front of me, and I have my phone over on the side doing chats with the producers. And there is so much visual clutter that, to me, I'm starting to appreciate how they muted all the palettes in particularly Final Cut Pro 10, because you sometimes look up and how many bright things are competing for my brain's attention right now.
Overall, I like dark mode. And every single bug report or question we get from a builder user is in dark mode. If they include a screenshot, it's always dark mode. So it's obviously quite popular. And certainly, I love Builder in dark mode way more than in regular light.
And that, to me, is the why. It allows the user to determine the focus, and it's not the interface or the icons or something that Apple did that is pulling my focus with, wow, that's a bright yellow over there. Oh, it's that stupid tag, and I don't care about that.
Sure. Oh, that stupid tag. That's very true. So we had, in 2013, we had Mr. Phil Schiller that came on the stage.
Yes.
He introduced the 2013 Mac Pro, and what was his famous quote? Can't innovate
my ass.
So do you think he's going to, if there is the Mac Pro, which everybody seems to think, the 2019 Mac Pro, at least a preview of it or the screen, whatever, they're going to see it on the screen. Will he be introducing it again?
He still had a marketing.
Right. So I wonder what his quote's going to be this time. You can't use that one twice.
No, particularly in this circumstance.
Exactly.
It would be interesting if they do something that's entirely modular, as is a very simple base, and then you build on the modules, including I'd like a stack of 5 GPUs. Thank you.
Right.
That would be an extremely fast bus going between them.
Right.
Maybe
that would connect like with 4 feet or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
Some kind of, it would have to be PCIe, you think, or
something more robust and Apple specific to the Mac Pro. I don't know.
Wait a minute. Philip, you're talking proprietary Apple? People aren't going to like that.
Well, for connecting modules together, Apple will be the only people making modules.
Okay. Yeah. But just for the Mac Pro. So,
because you need if you're going to do that stacking stuff, you need a physically robust connector as well. So I'm just not sure that PCIe.
I think that all the feet are going to have male and female XLR 5-pin.
5-pin. Well, it would have to be digital,
You'll have
I
the
think.
satisfying click when.
I would think it would be based on something, because right now I think PCIe 16 lane is faster than Thunderbolt 3. I think, right?
And it probably would be based on PCIe. It just may not be the traditional form factor.
Is it really
Right.
faster than Thunderbolt 3?
16 lane, definitely. I think Thunderbolt 3 is still
Yeah.
only like 4 lanes or
Yeah, I
something.
think it's 8, up to 8.
It's 8, okay.
That's what I thought.
I'm praying for some little glass panels that have an optical glass connection between them, and that you align, and then and anyway, it's it's all going to be fiber optic. That's my bet.
Well, but
Big fiber optic circles.
does fiber optic work with all data?
It passes so much so fast.
Yeah.
If you get out of the metal world and get into light, everything changes. The physics all change. This is not going to happen, but you wanted speculation, so there was some.
So Eric,
You know what I want?
what do you
I'm
want?
wishing for? You guys are going to laugh at me, but I'm wishing for a backward compatible Thunderbolt 3 to Thunderbolt 2 connector. Cannot find one anywhere. Cannot find one anywhere.
Backward
Nowhere.
compatible.
Backward compatible. I need Thunderbolt 3 female to Thunderbolt 2 male. And I went to there's a long story about why I need it, but I know there's millions of people that are going to need it. And you know what? We're going to have a new version of Thunderbolt sooner than we think. And so now all these cables that we've been buying, here we go again. We're going to be buying more cable.
Well, Thunderbolt 4 is announced, and it's on the USB-C form factor. So USB-C and Thunderbolt are now officially merged.
Okay,
in
so
version
3
4.
and 4 would be the same then.
Yeah.
The connector, I mean.
Well, they would be in the Mac world, but not necessarily in the PC world.
Really?
Yeah, because the Thunderbolt has never had a specific connector for Thunderbolt.
Okay.
Apple were the first to adopt it, and they put it on the DisplayPort connector.
Right.
Right.
Which of course ultimately wasn't fast enough, so they moved to PCI to a USB-C when that became available for theirs. But on the PC world, there's been a whole bunch of different connectors.
When I moved a year and a half ago, I threw away all the ancient things, and I had all the way back to Apple Talk and stuff. Just a huge box of legacy stuff. And for a moment, I was like, why did they have to migrate through all these things? And then I realized that every time they migrated, I was either mad or not mad, and generally not mad if it gave me new capabilities. If there was something that I could not do with the old connector stuff that I can do now. Usually the stuff that I could do trumped the stuff that I couldn't do if they had left it the same. Like the last time, that fact that they put on these USB-C connectors 100 watts of power has made things a lot easier for powered devices. And so I think I've gotten something better for the change, not just the agony of, let me throw a bunch of cables away and buy new cables.
Well, that's part of the fun.
I wish they'd stop soldering in the hard drives on these MacBook Pros, number one. And number two, the new APFS system is rendering things like, and I was going through this all day yesterday, that's why I'm kind of whining about it. But Disk Warrior doesn't work on the new MacBook Pros because of the new file system, which is great for security. But then if anything ever happens and you have to doctor or you have to go in and fix something, you can't. You can't take the hard drive out. You can't tether it. You can't get the media off of it.
Right.
And it's really debilitating. Anyway,
I haven't converted any of my hard drives to that yet.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned Allsoft and Disk Warrior because they tend to be a little bit late in getting things revved. And I was trying to figure out why, because obviously they've been a developer around for a long time. They know what they're doing. I'm sure they have people on staff that do that. And it always makes me wonder if they get stuck in that thing that they're trying to they're trying to evolve their hardware for the thing that's there now. But I wonder if they have some sort of a feeling about what's coming. And, the worst thing I've seen is somebody who put in a big development effort, announced their new thing, and a month and a half later it was obsolete because there's new hardware that can't use it.
Well, Disk Warrior has to be very, very careful.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They have to be extremely careful because people depend on them.
Oh,
I know
amen.
I do. So
Yeah.
they have to be careful. They can't just, say this is okay and then next thing you know, it's hosing hard drives. So
Exactly. Yeah, that's mission critical.
They're one of my. Go ahead.
I thought that when we upgraded to Mojave, we were stuck with the APFS system.
Only on the boot drive.
Oh, only on the boot drive. You know what? I
Yeah, but if you're
upgraded.
trying to boot up and you can't, what do you do?
I upgraded my MacBook Pro to Mojave just about 2 weeks ago. Did it change the file system without telling me? I didn't say yes.
I don't think it should have.
I don't. I hope
and
not.
I'm just checking now because I got the same. It's like
And what you have to do, Richard, is you have to go in and you have to actually change the defaults to allow you to boot from an outside hard drive if anything ever happens from an outside connection. Because the way Mojave is programmed right now, you cannot do that by default for security reasons. So if anything ever happens and you have to access that drive and there's any kind of address track problem, you're stuck. You're just really, there's nothing right now that I know of. And if anybody hears of anything, please let me know because I need it today.
Are we going to hear any update at WWDC about this file system, you think?
No.
I'm not sure what there is to update. I mean,
just I don't know, version 2.
Oh, that kind of thing. Would they rev a file system?
I don't know. Uh-oh.
there have been developments on file systems, and we've gone from HFS to HFS Plus over time.
Yeah. Good point.
So we have done that. Mind you, I'm finding this new disk system information is like I cannot actually find the format of the disk. Yeah, in system information, it's just crazy.
To everybody watching, if we lose the stream, see my lights are flickering right now. If we lose the stream, I will come back on as soon as it comes back up. So pay attention. I mean, I will come back up in the same places in Facebook and YouTube and where's the other one? On Twitter.
Are you on Google?
Not
Twitter
Google.
and Periscope.
Periscope. Yep.
My boot drive has been updated to APFS with Mojave, and I've never asked about it.
I didn't.
Nope, they didn't
either.
tell us.
No,
See,
they didn't tell us. They told us it was going to happen.
Uh-oh. I'm getting a warning.
Yes.
Tornado warning.
You need to throw up the Weather Service map and see what's about to hit Richard.
It says tornado warning in this area till 3:45. What's this? 15 minutes.
No.
Well, I'm pretty good shape. I have an all brick house, so.
Oh, there you go.
The good news is it'll be on camera for posterity.
If a tornado comes, I'm sure it'll take electricity out, which means we'll go out.
If only I had a special effects pipe into this thing. Just Richard out of the top.
The power outage is the reason why next week or the week after we'll have 2 Tesla power walls installed.
There you go.
No solar, just back up the house. And we can buy off-peak electricity and save money. Apparently, the economics are about 10 years. It pays back for itself. Plus, we have uninterruptible power.
Right.
That's great.
They did it in Arizona because obviously Arizona air conditioning costs are so high. We went on those evening differential rate things, and if you can use less power in prime zone, and they're bringing it to San Diego here right now. They just had us sign up for it. So I think all the electrical power grids are looking at that. Those peak loads must be like monstrous.
Yeah. Yep. And it's air conditioning that's the biggest problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Gotta have AC.
Ironically, we're going to have a 4-hour power outage while that's connected. So
AC and coffee, those are the 2 main things that I would have to have.
Yeah. Well, you can always get in your car for AC, so you need gasoline and coffee.
Well, I have that.
Good, there you go.
Absolutely have that.
You're safe, Richard. You're prepared.
So I'm going to pull up my...
weather report?
Yes, of course. Just to show everybody. Look at this.
Have you guys ever been near a tornado? I cannot believe it's frightening. It's really frightening.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
This is what I have right now in my. You guys can't see it, but there's the. Look at that ad. Stinky ads. There's what I'm facing right now. So.
Wow.
Oh man.
But anyway, 15 minutes. It should be over. If we last 15 minutes, we'll be good.
Okay,
but anyway,
so the thing to do is ignore it and get in the conversation.
Exactly. So WWDC and the Mac Pro, I think, are the biggest news for us. I mean, if they show a version of Final Cut Pro that's coming out in the future on the Mac Pro, that's fine. But the Mac Pro itself, I think, is the biggest biggest deal. So one of us has seen the Mac Pro. Cirina, what's it look like?
Oh, the brand new one? I haven't seen the brand new one.
Oh, he
damn
was
it.
baiting you.
No.
And a very
Did
good
I just
response,
say
by
that?
the way. Very good response.
That was a good response. I expected you to say, "Oh, I can't talk about it."
No, I did. The rumor has it that they might be talking about the MacBook Pro, but I don't know.
Well, the MacBook Pro was released 2 days ago or 3 days ago.
Yeah, but I think
Yeah. So what's up? 3 MacBook Pro updates in 1 year. That's
I know.
so unusual.
Because
for
there
Apple.
are way more professional editors working on MacBook Pros than there are on iMacs and iMac, and particularly on iMac Pros.
hey,
I mean,
Raises his hand. Everything is on that.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
that's what's driving it. I mean, it's not just, it's photography professionals, music professionals. They all want to be on the go. I mean, did you see the iPad Pro ad that Apple made entirely on an iPad Pro? They composed the music on an iPad Pro. They shot it on an iPad Pro, edited with LumaFusion on the iPad, on the app. Yeah, I get the company and to me, the company and the product are labeled back the wrong way round, but you know.
Right.
Hear you entirely.
And then you have LumaForge.
Yes, which is, it just wants to really screw with my brain. And
Exactly.
It's limited storage capacity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need companies to switch to calling themselves ChromaForge. And
if you remember the when we had the Creative Summit straight after a special event, I mean, the Final
2
Cut
years
was featured
ago.
in that special event. So
yes,
I don't know what they would do to do that.
I was in the shuttle coming from SFO to Cupertino, and I watched it, and just casually she mentions, "Oh, by the way, that's a new version of Final Cut Pro." Just very casually, because it was.
Here it is working in Final Cut Pro with the touch bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a funny beta cycle, because it was we need copies of your apps to test them against test them ourselves, and then we can't tell you why, but the reason will become obvious later, because the version of Final Cut that we were working in beta did not have the touch bar support that the release would, so there was always a chance that something would slip up between the version we're testing and the actual release version, so they had to run all of our apps and everything in our workflows against their release version internally. Sure.
That's interesting. So they keep the hardware locked down that hard.
Oh yeah, I mean, when hardware moves between places in Cupertino, it moves undercover so that you have no idea what's there.
Well, they had that one interview. Who was it with? And he had everything covered up in black tablecloths. Was it Charlie Rose or somebody like that? I forget who it was.
Yeah.
And they had everything covered up, but they still don't come into the place. I would have just grabbed one of the tablecloths, see what happened.
It seems weird and all that, but I'm remembering back. Remember when the first iPhone was launched, and basically a couple of buttons and mostly just all glass. Not a single phone looked like that before that moment. And then flash forward 3 years, and every damn phone on the planet looks exactly like that.
Well,
a big single sheet of glass with an interface that's entirely touch. So I can understand, man. Sometimes they do these weird ass things that are just like nobody thought of them doing that, and then it changes a whole industry. So whatever the new Mac Pro turns out to be, it'll be interesting to see if it's one of those watershed things, and that everybody else. I mean, this has happened over and over again. How many knockoffs did we see of the iMacs and the weird little form factors they've done? Then suddenly everybody does. Me too. Ours looks like that. I mean, I was shopping for AirPods, and on Craigslist, the number of knockoff AirPods that look exactly like AirPods,
of course,
is insane.
Of course. No, absolutely. So we got a couple of comments. Braden Stores says PCI is still faster than Thunderbolt 3 by a little bit. And then Puiks123, he says, "Hi guys, love the show. I hope that Final Cut Pro 10.5 fixes the disappearing VU meters when you change workspace screens. I haven't experienced that. Have you guys?"
No. I change workspace screens all the time, and it hasn't happened to me. So time to trash press, maybe?
Yeah.
Well, I understand they might be working on some enhancements to the way we handle sound. Hopefully.
Tell us about it, Cirina.
I don't. No, trust me. This is nothing that I hear that's This is not official. These are all, you know me, I'm in the rumor mill.
Serena's
There
going
you
to get ejected out of the screen right now, out of her chair.
No, this is nothing I have learned from anyone at Apple. It's just these are all rumors, and you know I just like to.
Just remember, Cirina, you don't have the tornado excuse.
Yeah, that's true.
No, but I have chased lightning and tornadoes for National Geographic. So Richard, you're scaring me right now.
I'll have to check.
So
and see
she's
what it
been
looks
there.
like.
Listen to her.
I've
She's
been
been
No,
there.
there.
I have an all brick house. It's built in 1960s, and it's brick from the. I'm pretty good shape as far as that goes, but I can go downstairs if something happens.
It's when the giant oak tree that is spinning in the tornado hits the wall of the brick house. that you have a
that's
problem.
true. Then
It's
I go
not the-
downstairs.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
The basement bunker.
Yes, I saw a photo of a tornado result, and there was a tree trunk through the side of the cement curb.
Yeah.
Like just rammed through it, not broken away, but just
Right.
literally rammed through it. Like,
I know we
it's quite a place.
intellectualize those tornado wind speeds.
Uh-huh.
We don't really understand them.
No,
viscerally, I
they're
don't think.
terrible. I mean, we were in the crew van in North Carolina, and we missed it by literally by about 5 minutes, and we had to stop. We couldn't get across the freeway. You know those big, huge freeway signs?
Yep.
Yeah.
Completely ripped out. Cars thrown across the road. It was terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, we get 60-mile-an-hour winds here regularly during the winter. 2 or 3 times we'll have at least 60-mile-an-hour wind events.
So
coming
think
down
about
that
twice that or 3
Yeah.
times that. That
is just destructive. My grill has been thrown across the balcony terrace twice, and that's with an extra block in. That's an extra 20 pounds of weight in it, and the 20-pound gas bottle as well.
Sure.
That's
Absolutely.
a heavy grill.
It
Big,
takes 2 of us.
heavy grill.
Takes 2 of us to lift it around.
yeah.
Wow.
Well, the main thing is just make sure Greg doesn't disappear.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm so screwed without him because I can't go for nuts. There's an enormous amount of intellectual property in that brain.
Absolutely.
So Philip, I'm curious about one thing while we have you on. How many developers are using Swift now?
I
Is
have
it,
no idea, but
you know,
most.
Because it's fairly new, and I know that Greg is really getting proficient at it, but do you think that that's going to be a hurdle for some people?
Heck no, it's easier to learn than Objective-C. It's much easier to learn than Objective-C. And it's a modern language that does both. You can write apps with it, but you can also do scripts. So it takes over the role of a lot of what AppleScript would do. You can do that now in Swift. So you don't have. That's why AppleScript's not getting developed anymore. You can do web application stuff. You can put a script line. You can call a script up in, say, CatTV, and that can be Swift. When we did a whole lot of that stuff in Ruby previously. But now you can do it in Swift. That's the great thing about it. It runs as a scripting language plus also as a compiled application, and the compiler makes it possible to do things like Playground. So yeah, nobody should be writing modern Mac code in anything but Swift. I mean, there's no need to go back and rewrite Objective-C because it's going to work for way into the future. I mean,
Right.
there's too much work at Apple to do to ever deprecate Objective-C. Most of the Cocoa frameworks are all Objective-C internally. But the thing is, in the Apple world, you can mix and match. So, you can have an app that is predominantly Objective-C, but all the new work is done in Swift.
Is that why they deprecated Quartz Composer a while back? It's just they knew that they were going to blow out all those simple things and wrap it into Swift?
Probably simply because the same way that they didn't reinvent most of QuickTime into AV Foundation was that nobody was using it.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Is there was amazing features in QuickTime. The QuickTime wired sprites. I don't know if you remember the first TV companion. All the movies were actual QuickTime animations inside. They were very small weight, they're very low bandwidth, because they were all wired sprites. We had the whole empty set of transitions built into QuickTime. We had QuickTime filters. You could load an external movie into another movie as a track. You could have a mixture of all sorts of a lot of things you can do in QuickTime that you cannot do in modern QuickTime and AV Foundation. It's basically that was a system level multimedia interactive framework, and in the modern world, QuickTime is simply a media playback engine, which is a simpler message and easier to maintain, but with a fraction of the resources, because as much as I loved them, nobody else was using them.
And QuickTime did get a bad rap for color handling and a few other things.
It was never, the color management was never built into it in the early days, but in the last period of Final Cut Pro, QuickTime color management was there. Final Cut Pro Classic and QuickTime Player supported it, but other apps didn't. And so you still get color shifts on an MOV between Final Cut Pro 10 and Premiere Pro, because Final Cut Pro 10 is color managed and Premiere Pro is not color managed.
So
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people. I still have QuickTime 7 on my older Macs. I keep it around just for certain things.
Yeah, the day it stops running, it'll be a very, very sad day. I should probably have a funeral.
yeah.
Memorial service for QuickTime.
Maybe we can combine it for the funeral for my MacBook Pro.
Sure.
What happened? Tell us about that, Cirina.
Oh, I was in the middle of, I actually had it tethered just to make things easy. And I'm moving media around, and all of a sudden I just hear this. And
That's not a good noise.
nope. And
then she let the smoke out. And that once they let the smoke out, that's the magic gone. Once
it died.
Smoke is
It
keeping
just
everything
died.
working, and once you let that smoke out, it stops working.
That's true.
Oh, man.
So hopefully you're going to get that taken care of.
No, I spent a couple hours myself trying to fix it. Then I called Apple support. They couldn't fix it. They made an emergency appointment for me at the Genius Bar yesterday, and I taught them how to try to fix it. And and no, it's dead. And that's why I was talking about. I really wish they wouldn't solder those hard drives in, because what I could have done was replace the hard drive and then worked on recovering media off the other one.
Right.
But can't do that anymore.
Well, we'll see what the new Mac Pro looks like. I mean, it's nobody's even doubting that it's going to come out. I mean, nobody.
Yeah. Well, they've told us that it's going to come out this year, so
right.
It's reasonable to see a preview of it now, even if it's not going to actually ship until December 19, like it did with the 2013 Mac Pro.
Right, right over Christmas holiday or something. It was something ridiculous.
Yeah,
Hey, Richard, I fixed my screen in case you want to edit highlights out of this, so it's back.
There you go.
I dropped out.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's much nicer.
Or low lights if you're in dark mode.
So if they show the Mac Pro, I mean, everybody's pretty much presuming that they're going to. I can't imagine. I interviewed Ronnie Kortens a couple weeks ago, and he said if they don't show the Mac Pro, there's going to be
rioting in the streets.
Exactly. So everybody's pretty sure
that's Delta play.
Yeah.
Delta pay.
Knowing full well they're only going to sell about 5,000 of them.
Does anybody who pays attention to the processor side of this, to what Intel's doing and the rest of that, are we stable now? Because I was hearing new terms like, is it Crystal Lake and some of these other things that are coming. It seems to me that one of the reasons it's been so iffy in terms of hardware coming out in stages is that they're still chasing the processor design yield thing. Does that seem reasonable, or am I crazy about that?
Well, one of the things they said, though, it's supposed to be upgradable.
Yeah,
so
but
if the current processor is not quite there, they can upgrade it to a new processor or something for a while anyway.
I don't think Apple marketing would be happy with coming out in the beginning and using specs and performance things with a generation before processor if they can realistically think they can deliver the next generation processor in yield quantities that do this.
Right.
That's my feeling. I mean, that's a reasonable marketing thing. I mean, what does everybody want? Everybody wants to get this new box and go, wow, that is fast. That is stable. Oh my gosh, I'm getting so much done. And that blows up the internets, right? With everybody going, it's a lot of money, or whatever it is, or it's a reasonable amount of money, who knows? But man, you buy this and it makes your life faster and better. That's I think the big game that everybody plays.
Well, but no matter what Apple puts out, you're going to have people complaining. No matter what.
People do that?
Yes. I put up my top 10 Mac Pro complaints list on FCPX.TV, And of course, it's all the typical complaints about it costs too much. You're going to hear that no matter what. I can build it for half the price. I can build a PC for half the price. Yes, you can,
Yeah.
but you can't run.
And it'll be
Final Cut Pro on
twice
it.
as fast, and it'll,
Yes.
and you're stupid to pay that much for this much performance.
And there's not enough ports, and there's too many ports, and there's not,
The wrong kind of ports, and
You're right,
I have to
exactly.
have dongles for the ports.
There's no way they're going to please everybody. And there's just, but I don't care if they please everybody. I want them to please us four. Okay? That's what.
Well,
That would be very nice.
not even. Sorry, Bill.
Well, I've just come away from being. I used to have to do that, right? Back when the only way you could make your Mac work with video was to get the correct card with the correct bus. It's Granite Digital selling a faster bus that'll allow the hard drive to talk to it and not drop frames. And we always used to have to be that kind of tech guru in order to get in there and do it. I just think where we are now, which is I bought a laptop, I threw 10 on it, and it ran fast, and it ran strong, and it ran well. There were glitches along the way. They're updated it. Most of them worked remarkably well, to the point where I just click yes now virtually all the time when people do updates, or when Apple pushes an update for Final Cut. I never did that before. It was always like, let's wait and see what the internet say. And they haven't snapped me very much in the last few years with that. I don't know everybody else's experience, but they've been very stable and very solid. And then I just want the whole machine to disappear, and I want to be in the footage. I just want it to do what if I do JKL and I tap L 3 times, I want it to go fast, smoothly to where I want to be, to hit stop and play, and to have it stop and play smoothly. And if you can do that for me, then the rest of it is just numbers. And I don't care about numbers. I care about getting the work done.
So do you guys that go to the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit, did you like the end of October or the middle of November dates?
Doesn't make a lot of difference to us.
End
What
of
about you, Bill?
October.
Yeah, it was weird on the online. It used to be right about the weekend of Halloween.
Right. And people complained.
Yeah, there are 2 or 3 people that we know, and they
Right.
have families, and I get that.
Right.
Halloween can be a big family holiday, so you're precluding a certain number of people who are in a situation where taking a Halloween weekend to go do a trade show doesn't work for them. It snapped me last year. I couldn't go because they pushed it past Halloween, but unfortunately into the prime production world I do, because a lot of my work is first of the year, first quarter. So we are highly in back and forth and creative stuff for the work that's going to appear 2 months down the road. And
Now,
so I was
Bill-
just swamped. Yeah.
Bill, that's not true. The reason you couldn't make it last year because the other Bill Davis was there.
That's right. Yeah. We didn't want to create the singularity. have
Inception. If you
Yeah.
came at the same time he did, it would be Inception.
previous Creative Summit Bill and current Creative Summit Bill could not show up in the same space without a rift in the space-time.
Yes.
He is a very, very nice fella. We had a chance to talk at NAB, and he's going to do nothing but burnish the Bill Davis reputation. So thanks, Bill, wherever you are.
There you go. You can tag on to some of that fame and glory.
I'm hoping it. I'm hoping some of the people that I've ticked off will mistake and think, well, that Bill's really much more thoughtful and intelligent and nicer. Okay, I'll take it.
Absolutely. So we know we're pretty sure that the Mac Pro is going to come out at WWDC, which is the main thing I'm watching for. We're also pretty sure that Final Cut Pro 10.5 is coming out in 2019. So that could either be, they could do like a preview at WWDC, and they have to save something for the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit because we go to Apple Campus, and they can't just show us the same old version of Final Cut that's been out for a year. That wouldn't make any sense. So if they don't release it, I don't expect them to release 10.5 at WWDC, but I wouldn't mind seeing a couple of screenshots on the stage.
That wouldn't surprise me, and that would make me feel like they're taking care of their promise. I mean, it is a chance, but it all really depends on how close is it to shipping.
Sure,
I think.
absolutely.
I mean, that's the key.
Absolutely.
Because God knows, please don't do that thing that other people have done. The red camera, it's coming, and the next year, no, it's really coming, and then the year after that, no, it's going to come sooner or later, and you were like 4.5 years into the announcement of the product before people could actually get them.
If you ever got it.
Yeah, well, red cameras are out there and people got them, and they've turned out to be fine cameras and people love them and use them. But man, if I had said, I'm going to hold off and I'm not going to rev my business in year one of the red announcement, and I'm going to hold off until that camera that they promised me at NAB it shows up on my doorstep, I would have starved for 4 years. And
yeah. You go the other way with Blackmagic, though. They announce a new camera at NAB, they ship it at IPC, and they announce a new one at NAB again.
Right.
Yes.
By the time they catch up with shipments, they're actually shipping an obsolete camera.
Well, that's exactly right. Last 2018, they had the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera announced. They didn't have, it came out September or October, but there was no way the supply was meeting demand. It's still not meeting demand 100% a year later. Now, everybody, at that price point, it's a really great camera, but
and we're in summer now, but at the end of the year, the Creative Summit is toward the middle end of the last quarter, which means that they're also in the middle of the Christmas retail cycle thing. This is not a consumer product at all.
Absolutely.
So, but Apple does have lots of consumer products. So you would imagine that Apple's corporate energy and mind will be on in that fourth quarter, fulfilling, creating, marketing, shipping, loading up those rail cars.
Sure.
Boy, I remember I was driving from Phoenix to Los Angeles once, and there was this gigantic, and I do mean gigantic, it must have been 350 rail cars on the siding outside of Phoenix. And I was talking to somebody who understood, a guy I know who worked for Southern Pacific. And I said, he said, you don't understand, that's resupply for Phoenix.
Wow.
As Christmas comes and they start selling things, they're going to sell massive amounts of goods, and the next restock is on that train sitting secure in the desert to roll in and resupply. That's how much stuff gets sold during Christmas holidays. And so it is a big deal. Fourth quarter for any company who touches retail is, and I've worked with enough retailers to know, it's kind of all hands on deck. Don't talk to us.
Sure.
From Black Friday on, we've had to go a month and a half ahead of that and work like dogs to get ready to service that yearning market need. So there's a piece of that I think that's going to roll into this. They've said this year, I think we might get a taste of something, a look, a screenshot, something that does some piece of reveal, whether that's big or small or full or not, I don't know. Then I think the shipping or the discussion of we're going to ship some units to fulfill our promise before December 31st, but the actual boxes will probably get into the big distribution system right at the end of the year. That would be my guess.
So I wonder what FMC do if there isn't actually a version of Final Cut ready to go. Software development is not always a predictable.
No, you're absolutely right, Philip. Absolutely right. However, I'm sure they're in talks with Apple as we speak, because Apple determines when that weekend is, not FMC.
Absolutely. That's why it was late. That's why it was late last year, because they weren't ready to go.
Yeah.
Right.
So
software development, particularly if it's something important, like maybe an audio mixer or something, something important.
Sure.
People, maybe dupe detection.
Well,
that's what's held it off for 2 years now.
Yeah, well, if you have a big update like that, it's not predictable when it's going to get finished. So, particularly for something that has a serious design edge to it. So, I wonder what FMC would do. Do we want them to have a conference, even though at most we can get a preview under NDA, or?
Well, at least, I'd say at least that. But I think, wouldn't Apple have a backup plan? If they couldn't release 10.5, wouldn't they have a backup plan to release 10.4, 7, 8? Something?
No, it's really hard to do those sorts of piecemeal. You're working on a plan for features will get dropped because they're not done in time.
Sure.
I think I can say it now.
Wait, just don't say it then.
No. I mean, noise reduction, video noise reduction were in 2 betas before the one that it was actually the version that was actually released in, and each time it got pulled before release because they were not happy with it.
Sure.
So it just could be that they are not going to release something until they're ready, or like software development is not a predictable path. And the bigger the update, the more moving parts there are that all have to move together.
Yeah. And let's talk about the elephant in the room, because everybody's been saying the word collaboration for a long time, right? Everybody's been talking.
I successfully avoided saying that.
well,
Ronnie Corton's talked about it on the last show.
Yeah, everybody understands that it is a topic of great interest to many editors, particularly high-end editors, in what we hope will be the target demo to buy the new Mac Pro. I mean, right, people who want the fastest, most expandable, most upgradable, most future-proofed piece of hardware that their computing life can integrate. So that said, you just have to wonder whether or not the software and the hardware integration, I mean, are they writing pieces of whatever will become a version of Final Cut Pro 10 down the road that must integrate and talk with and connect with whatever will be the hardware that will come out in ways to really expand possibilities. You know, before the scrolling timeline that everybody is still iffy about, right? We had no kind of scrolling timeline, and then we got to something where you click and refresh, but everybody wants a live scrolling timeline. Is that a function? And I don't know, I'm purely asking the question. Is that a function of the number of GPU cycles or refresh cycles or something that can be done while you're throwing these big data of video around to just take care of interface updates? I don't know, but maybe this solves that in a way that they're happy with.
Well, you can get scrolling timeline through command post now.
Right.
So,
but command post is then stealing cycles, isn't it, or is it? Maybe
no. It's basically turning on hidden preferences and scripting the interface using the handicap features, the disabled.
Right.
Accessibility.
Right.
Accessible. Thank you. That's
well, you have, as far as the scrolling timeline goes, Logic does it brilliantly, and it's done it for years, and it refreshes the waveforms and all that stuff. So
right, but if you're doing that refresh there, are you losing the extra stream of 4K video?
Well, no, I understand.
Yeah.
But the thing is they give us the option if we want to turn it on or not. You know, from what I understand, and I'm not going to tell you who I heard this from, but I heard that they've had it since version 1. Since version 10.0, there's been a scrolling timeline option, you know, in Final Cut. Philip, you don't have to say anything, 'cause I'm not talking about you. But
no, it wasn't me, but
no, I know somebody has told me that would know.
I have seen it in a beta. Obviously, it wasn't working to Apple's satisfaction,
Sure.
and it was disabled.
That's completely fine. Fine.
And so that's Apple's pattern. You know, yes, we can do it, but we can't do it really well. Sure. We can't do it in a way that doesn't mess up something else.
RT hack.
Yeah.
Going back in the old Final Cut days, I think it was it 3.0 or 2.0? There was a hack. You could overrule Apple's limitations on how many streams were possible, because Apple was being very conservative, and the hardware is actually capable of a lot more than Apple's conservative. Now, one more generation further on, and Apple recognized that people really did want those extra streams, even if there was a compromise, and we had RT Extreme as a response to the RT hack.
But at some point, people turn that on, forget about it, and then they just light up angry. It won't play 6 streams for me.
Yeah.
What is this? The other thing will play 6 streams.
People are going to be angry no matter what. So just have to take your pick on which angry mob you want to deal with.
Right.
At any given time. Because you know, there's going to be the Mac Pro could be the most brilliant thing that all the Mac people want. And no matter what, it's going to be, oh my God, we can't do this and we can't do that. And where's the, one of my list things was there's no FireWire. That's one of them. It's just ridiculous.
And there's no 50-pin Centronics parallel port either.
And there's no DVD player.
And remembering that the Mac Pro is going to sell a really, really small number of units. Under 5,000 is probably the expectation. You almost built them by hand.
Are they going to? I wonder if they're going to build them in Austin, Texas, because the last Mac Pro were built in Austin, Texas. They brought them in.
Which apparently was a disaster. But these days, another complicating factor is supply chain right now with the issues that are happening with supply chain to China.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. We're in the middle of a trade war, and that's kind of going to mess. That's the global thing about that train sitting outside of Phoenix to resupply it.
Yeah. But the ship outside the port of San Francisco isn't going to be there to resupply the train if it
Right.
doesn't leave China.
Do you guys think we're ever going to see a touchscreen MacBook Pro?
Probably not. It makes no sense.
Well, but you have the
Just-
iPad with the keyboard.
But look like this all the time.
But you have
You
the
know,
iPad with the keyboard.
Yeah, but how long can you spend up in the air on the screen all the time?
Well, no, you don't. No, you don't have to use the touchscreen, but you can as an
Well,
option.
What about how are you going to touch something on the screen? Or you still have a mouse, I guess. Or a
Yeah, you
trackpad?
still have your trackpad and still have your.
Well, then
You know,
why do you need
it's
the
funny
touchscreen?
because when I'm on the iPad and then I go to my MacBook Pro and I'm touching the screen to make QuickTime play, and I say, why
I do
isn't
that
this
too.
playing?
Touching the screen.
Oh, I never do. So I don't see.
Well,
that.
no, it wouldn't replace, but there is, Final Cut kind of looks like you can drag and drop effects down from the browser with your finger and stuff. But it would be a combination. But I mean, how many times have I seen the iPad Pro with the keyboard? And it's
Yeah,
just like,
right.
okay,
You can't type significant amounts of typing on the iPad. My coffee machine is my iPad, and I delay responding to emails until I come back onto my full screen because it's just not worth the hassle of typing on the iPad.
is that right? It's that bad?
Yeah, I can type on it, but it's just clumsy.
With the
I use
keyboard?
Duet.
External keyboard.
With the
Yeah,
keyboard, Philip?
here's the thing though. I use Duet Display, and I throw something on the iPad, depending on what I'm working on my main machine. Now, often I just use a PDF. Let's say I've got something where I've got a spreadsheet with client notes, and I have to go through them one at a time. I don't really need to interact with that, right? So I throw it up as a PDF. Every once in a while, I use Duet, and I extend the monitor space, and I throw it over there. If I have to do something like the producer put all the titles, all the attribution titles for all the people in this in a spreadsheet. So I'd rather cut that and paste it into my Final Cut Pro 10 timeline. So there I need a live update on my iPad, not just the display of something. But I'd say it's 95% of the time I use my iPad as just a monitor, which means I'm paying for hundreds of dollars small monitor to do the same job that I could buy a $90 Best Buy screen and throw up there. So I'm not using a ton of the capability that's sitting next to me. So what's the smart thing? There's no one thing that makes it right for everybody in every use case, and that's the problem, I think.
So if Apple releases or shows us the Mac Pro at WWDC, they're going to have the typical live stream. You can go to apple.com and just scroll down and find that. There's going to be a collective sigh across all the video professionals, especially Final Cut, around the world simultaneously. I know that's going to be the biggest thing for me. I guess Phil Schiller gets round 2 with this thing. I presume he's going to be there.
But look at how strange this is. I mean, most of the time for most of Apple's history, you didn't know 2 years in advance that there was a new product that was meant for you that's coming.
Right.
It's just going to take a long time to develop. And it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. It'll be interesting to see how much of the immediate hue and cry is in which direction.
Well, the Mac Mini has been fairly well accepted, right? People really like that.
Yeah, I think so.
People have a use case for it, love it.
Yeah, so I think that maybe, if the Mac Pro follows some kind of a pattern like that, it might be less hated by some than we expect. But I'm so used to people with Apple. It's just, Apple this and Apple that. And it's just like, okay, whatever you want to do. But if it looked, maybe they'll hook up, well, obviously it's going to be modular. They've already said that. It's going to be upgradable. They've said both of those things. Yeah. So whatever that means as far as Apple's concerned. But, a stackable unit, like a base unit, maybe 2 Mac Minis high or something. And then I'm just the design of it, just the form factor. I just want to see it, and then hopefully they have the specs out or possible specs or whatever.
So here's the thing: look at the people involved, right? So I'm going to assume Johnny Ives touched a lot. of this thing.
I told Johnny Ives should stay away from the Pro hardware.
Well,
keep away. Keep away.
If you
he can
want
don't let him see it. Just let him do the iPhones.
If you want to extract Johnny Ive from this process, you will get a square tower, in the same form factor that everybody has, and they, a certain kind of user will be delighted because all my cards going back to 2003 will all fit in.
I'm only kidding. I like Johnny Ives' design, but I mean, the main thing is don't compromise power and performance for what it looks like. I mean, there's a marriage there that can happen. I mean,
right, but on the punch list of system requirements, you would think that power and performance would have been pretty much right at the top.
So I've got to jump in here. This is such a niche product. Almost nobody cares about it.
Okay.
They're not going to sell 5,000. They didn't sell 5,000 at the last Mac Pro.
You're kidding? Not even 5,000?
No, it's a terrible niche product. You'd think that on a major motion picture that it'd be all Mac Pros. No, both Focus and Gone Girl was done on PCs. On
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Yeah, one Mac Pro. The rest were all iMacs, regular iMacs, not iMac Pros, but just regular iMac. Because nobody's
Now, what about the previous generation, the cheese graters though? They sold, right? They sold.
Yeah, but as soon as the iMac was better performance than the old irrelevant cheese grater, it sold a little bit better. But the need for a Mac Pro has been going like this.
Yeah, because I used to have Mac Pros, and then the first time I bought a serious modern laptop, I went, well, the hell with that. Why in the world wouldn't I want a computer that is 99% of the performance and function, and I can take it in my briefcase?
And on a 3-year-old, slightly over 3-year-old iMac, 27-inch iMac, I can do 4K H.264, 2 streams, size them, rescale them, and in a timeline without going to proxies. So what extra am I going to get? Where's driving me? I don't have a need to update it.
Right.
It's got all the power that I need right now, and it's got all the power that I'd need if I was doing a feature film.
I think there's a. Oh, go ahead, Richard.
No, I was going to say what I get a kick out of when people have a MacBook Pro, and then they attach an eGPU to it, and then they attach another, an external display to that, and I'm like, well, that's the iMac.
Yeah,
it's just like, if you're going to do all that, just buy an iMac. No, I understand. I have the MacBook Pro, of course, and when I'm traveling and I keep it out in the other room, I use that for other things. But
you can't travel. The
That's
iMac
weird.
Pro, that's heavy. Those cases are heavy.
No, of course they are.
Yeah. Can I talk about a software thing that I really think needs to happen sooner rather than later? And
No.
Yes.
No.
Please.
Go ahead, Cirina. I'm only teasing.
That is an update to the captioning, which I'm delighted that they have it. I think it's wonderful we can go to 608 now for open captioning. But what happens is there's some bugs in the system now. It doesn't always save your changes. And when you go from closed to open captions within Final Cut, you lose all of the timing that you've attached to those captions.
Really?
And
wait, have you submitted a bug report?
I've got a full page of things I'm going to send into them.
Each one has to be done separately. Don't send a whole page because they
the next month.
Well, it's really important. I don't allow anyone to complain about a software feature that they haven't reported as a bug.
I agree.
Because it's the first thing you should do.
Trust me, I'm not complaining. I'm so grateful to have it because that project that I just am finishing has almost 600 captions in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a full length, almost an hour. And so I'm noticing a lot of things that you don't notice when you're just doing a 1 or 2 minute piece, right? A 1 or 2 minute piece, it's easy. But if you're captioning for the deaf community or the hard of hearing or the hearing impaired community, you have to have those captions. They're becoming more and more prevalent. And so I'm hoping that the new version of the software, when it comes out, will make those accessibility issues easier to work.
Only if somebody has reported them, because nobody at Apple will be testing will have a 1 hour timeline like yours to test on. So, these things will only get fixed if you have reported them as soon as you find them, because if you report it, it's going to take 6 to 8 months to get into a release. These things cannot be done in a dime like we can do. There's a process within Apple. You have to decide whether or not this really is a bug. It has to be prioritized. It has to be allocated to an engineer, to a project manager and an engineer. It has to go through the process, and somebody is that directly responsible individual to get that bug fixed and get it into the system. But it all starts with the bug report from the user. And the more people that report bugs, the more the higher the priority that particular bug will get.
And I think the quality of your reporting on the bugs, I think, has something to do, because one of the things is if only 2 people have said this is an issue, you got to understand, I would imagine it to be lower on the priority, unless it's something really specific and really damaging. But if 50 people do it, then they're going to look for, well, where can I get the most information that helps me the most set this process in motion?
Yeah.
And that is qualitative.
And honestly, if you do not have steps to repeat, then you might as well not make the report, because there's absolutely nothing that the software engineer can do. Believe it or not, we get, we have a little internal joke about idiot customer of the week, and a disproportional number of those come from .edu email addresses. Sorry, my edu friends, but it's true.
No, they're often teachers who aren't software experts.
Oh no, they're usually professors who don't have the foggiest idea how to start a computer.
There you go.
There you go.
But it is not unknown. It's like it literally the entire bug report is it didn't work. What went wrong? Not even telling us the name of the app.
Well, they don't understand what has to happen on your end. I have to say, I do want to clarify, I'm really excited that the new version of Final Cut is incorporating all these captioning opportunities, because I couldn't have done this project as quickly as I did without it.
Sure.
It's
I just
saved
think it
my
needs
butt at
improvement.
least 4 times in the last month, the new captioning capabilities.
And Storm Smith, who gave a talk at NAB, she's a deaf filmmaker, was talking about all of this, and she just worked with Apple on a series of videos with someone from Lyft, who one of the CEOs or executives at Lyft is deaf, and she just created some videos for the deaf community about how to code in Swift. And so I know that Apple's really trying to become more accessible, and I admire that a lot. So,
well, they've always been they've been in the forefront.
Yeah.
But here's what you want to do, Cirina. Make a screen recording with captions.
Yep.
With captions.
I did. I've got
And then
screen grabs, and Philip, thank you for your advice, because I've just been sort of gathering a few tips and things that happened to me, and I'll just report it one at a time. Thank you. I'll do that.
Because what happens is that there is 1 or 2 people in the team whose entire job is to look at bug reports, see if they've been reported before, if they have, mark it as yet another duplicate, or if it's not, put it into the system to be dealt with. And every bug report that gets sent to Apple does get looked at. It does get prioritized. Somebody decides whether this is a problem between keyboard and chair and not something to worry about, or if it's a bug, or if it's a feature enhancement. These are every one of those is responded to, and there are people at Apple that are looking at every forum, every Facebook group that's publicly accessible. I've had stuff happen a few years ago now, but at NAB, when they still did the Sunday afternoon presentations at NAB, I'm in the afternoon, I think on Creative Cow, I'd made some reference to the DVD Studio Pro 3 was a little underwhelming, because that was a remake. It was a rewrite of DVD Studio Pro at that point. Well, on Tuesday night at the ProMax event, a whole bunch of Apple people come in, including the product manager for DVD Studio Pro, and said, Mr. Hodgetts, the man who thinks my 3.0 release is underwhelming.
Yeah, I remember
At NAB, with nothing else going on, somebody had managed to get my comment on Creative Cow on Sunday afternoon to the product manager of the app by Tuesday night.
They read.
It's almost creepy. So
it is.
I assume that everything I say is going to be scrutinized by somebody at Apple.
Yep. They've told us multiple times that every email that's sent in is read. Now, that doesn't mean every email that's sent in is acted on, or you don't get a response to it. You're not going to get an email back, but every one of them is read.
Yep.
I believe that. I believe it. Well,
So you can access that from the Final Cut Pro app menu. I think it's under the help section or the file section. I forget which. And that's how you report it. So WWDC, I guess all of us are going to be watching, right?
Absolutely.
Probably we'll watch it at the night afterwards. I have a busy day on a Monday.
Oh, okay. That's a little hint.
Oh, no, actually, I normally have I go to my chiropractor during the
okay.
day.
Okay.
is your singing lesson on Monday too?
that's usually been on Thursdays now. So
Oh, okay, it changed. Okay.
yeah. Well, I used to do a Burbank Monday, and then I realized it was less travel time to go to each thing independently than stay in Burbank for an hour and a half between the events.
Hey, it's California. You should find a dual practitioner who's a chiropractor singing coach.
There you go.
And then you can cut half the time off your schedule.
Like those multi-purpose tools, I doubt that either of them would be as good as the individual ones that I have now. Or the combined teacher would be anywhere near as good as my human mechanic.
There
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So any other predictions for WWDC besides dark iOS, besides the Mac Pro, besides maybe seeing a new version screenshot of Final Cut Pro? Anything else we're looking forward to specifically?
From a developer perspective,
Did you say Mac Pro? Sorry,
Yes.
Philip.
Yes.
I mean, new frameworks, new functionality that we might be able to use.
I think there will be at least a few messages about Apple's doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on security, because that's, I think, going to be bigger and bigger and bigger as time goes on.
And I appreciate that and hate it at the same time.
I know, right. I hear you.
Exactly. Exactly.
It means you can't do everything you want to do because that might expose something, and so you have to think on two planes.
And the one thing we're not taking into account are workflows. There's a lot of things, and a lot of apps have been withdrawn from the Mac App Store simply because they can't maximize the flexibility of the app for small, video workflows and things if they have it locked down to make the Mac App Store. Sandboxing is an incredible limitation for workflow automation, and again, niche markets. There's only a few thousand people that are ever affected by this, but it can be the security can be a real problem for workflows.
Yeah. And more, because I have a couple of projects that come through every year that are very confidential, and the companies that are involved in them say, listen, I'm going to bring you a hard drive. We're not going to send anything across the internet. And when you have these new tools like captioning, and you say, oh, it's just easy, I'll click it and it'll send it up to the cloud and they'll turn it into captions and it'll send it back down. Yeah, the security people go, no, you won't.
No, you won't.
You will not send this text out to anywhere so that anybody can see it, period. And we'll fire you if you do.
Exactly.
Which is why a lot of the major speech-to-text providers have on-premise option, so you can run their algorithms, but on your own hardware inside your firewall.
Yeah, it's one of the first things I talked to Mike Matsdorf about when he was working with Simon Says was, hey, is there a completely air-gapped piece of this system? I said, yes. If you're at that level, they will come out and install something. They'll install a whole code on a drive for you, so you can do your captioning here in-house and never see the light of the internet. And you have to do that kind of thing. I mean, that's the world we live in now. Because think of the amount of presentations and the amount of proprietary information those contain that are getting just, send it from the desktop up to the cloud.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I know.
When you work with the studios, you have to use human transcription a lot of them because they won't allow it.
They won't allow any copies being made.
They still won't allow AI. Nope.
Well, not even in an in-premises. That's the whole purposes of the on-premises versions. Is so that they can go, and that's what Speechmatics are selling to. They're putting on-premises speech-to-text inside the network, behind their firewall, and that's how it's getting used. Now, you could do that and then just bring all the transcripts into Builder, which would work for that. Because Builder actually does something more than just gets transcripts, unlike every other service.
Oh, Builder does a lot more than any of the other ones I can think of.
Now we're descending into commercials. So
that's all right. You're allowed to plug your product. Absolutely.
We're allowed to be excited about it.
I am very excited about tomorrow. I mean, actually, Builder has had 6 feature updates in May and 6 bug fixes, including 2 yesterday. 1 bug fix and 1 new feature yesterday, and a major update tomorrow.
There it is.
Yes, I will say that Builder 2.0 will be released on Friday, the May 30, whatever tomorrow is.
31st. 31st.
But I'm not going to tell you what it does.
There you go.
Wonderful things that'll help you make money. That's what it does.
It's very exciting, but it's a big step forward for the communities.
Do you think we're going to see, well, I presume we're going to see more workflows, apps for the next version of Final Cut, more integrated apps?
Oh, workflow extensions.
Extensions, sorry.
Yeah, I would guess
Yeah.
they will have a couple of new ones, some new ones. I don't know, a couple, 10, 5, 1, who knows?
Ones
But
that make sense, yeah.
yeah, it's an exciting area. I got to tell you, man, that has changed a lot of things. That has driven a lot of friction out of my day-to-day works. I use Shutterstock a ton because some of the videos for some of my clients, they rely on a lot of stock stuff. The Frame.io stuff, I'm constantly pinging into that. So it's just easier. It's easier.
So I keep seeing the request, that we have it in the chat, Final Cut Pro for the iPad.
Not going to happen.
I don't think it would either. First off, you have iMovie, but you have this LumaFusion,
Yeah.
which is phenomenal. It's absolutely a phenomenal NLE on the iPad. And they let something slip when I interviewed them at NAB. They're working on a version for the Mac.
Well, I mean, see, this Marklar project makes that easy. They can use all the work they've done on their iOS code and just bring it into the Mac interface.
Yeah.
That's what they'd be doing there, absolutely.
And how many decades has it been since we got iMovie and Windows Movie Maker and those basic start off? I mean, they're all really ripe for doing something better, something easier, something more fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, iMovie on the iOS is a great, or LumaFusion on iOS is a great starting point for Final Cut. I mean, iMovie goes straight to Final Cut Pro 10 now, iOS to Final Cut Pro 10. Used to have to go via iMovie on the Mac OS, but now you can go straight to Final Cut Pro 10. I don't know if it's in a released or it's still a coming version of LumaFusion. They're going to have a send to Final Cut Pro 10 option.
They're going to have Final Cut Pro XML. That's correct.
Yeah, and we can send things from Switcher Studio and Cinemaker to Final Cut Pro 10 for finishing as well. So I don't see why we'd try and shoehorn in the complexity and dumb down what is Final Cut Pro 10, even if we could solve the media issue. I mean,
Right.
Everything's got to be proxies. It's like, I mean, I think LumaTouch have done a great design job of doing that with LumaFusion, but
Yes, they have.
But it's still limited.
No, of course. So speaking of proxies, when you said that, I got a kick out of, I've been having the discussion this week about the possibility of 8K cameras coming in. Well, the Sharp's already introduced a sub $5,000 8K camera. It's coming. And of course, Red already has it and stuff, but Panasonic might be doing a 6K or an 8K. And here's the funny thing. If you have 8K media, the proxy is 4K. The proxy is 4K.
Yeah.
So you're right back to 4K with that. So very interesting.
Agile proxy creation is probably something that the industry is thinking about, because there's going to be nothing but the same thing. The sensors are going to scale up. I mean, somebody will figure out how to do sensors like those DSLR sensors that do video well. It's just going to take a while. At least if you listen to Michael Cioni, there's just no reason to stop sensor density moving up.
No, you're not going to be able to. It's just the way the technology works. He talked about 8K on an iMac in 2018 NAB.
Yeah.
So now, of course, that's probably with ProRes, not with the H.264, H.265.
I think the fascinating thing about whatever, if they release it soon here or later, how they looked at modularity and intermodule connection. How did they come down on that? It's going to be, I think, fascinating, and we'll say a lot about where we'll be going in the industry coming up in the future.
Bill, isn't that a Mac Pro behind you? 2019 Mac Pro.
No, there are no Mac Pros in this office. No, you're on I'm still editing everything on a 3-year-old MacBook Pro, and this may be the upgrade cycle. I liked what I saw 2 days ago.
Bill, what you should have done is said, "Oh shit," and blurred your background immediately.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Wait! No!
That's great, Philip. That's hilarious.
I'd like to think I have a reasonable reputation for not spilling beans, but I'm not in that core group. I do not.
So I survived the tornado warning and thunderstorms.
Yay! You're out of danger.
But I looked out the window and there was an Apple truck outside plugged into my telephone pole. So I guess they gave me some kind of solar power to
There you
take
go.
over. They wanted us to continue our conversations. They love our conversations.
Yeah.
I
You're gonna
seem to
get
have to jump out of our
arrested.
conversation. I have some help videos to make for tomorrow's release, so I need
Oh,
to
yeah.
do that.
No, it's time anyway. That's great. I sure thank you all for stopping in today. Philip Hodgetts from Lumberjack Systems, Bill Davis, Cirina Catania. My name is Richard Taylor, and we are on Final Cut Pro Radio TV Live. We will be back at some point. I'll let everybody know. Thanks, everybody, for stopping in today. I'll talk to you all later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.